Today on Motion Drive, we learn Blender's shortcuts. Welcome to Motion Drive. I'm Ben Lundgren, and I know what you're thinking. That was extremely relevant to this video, and it was. There are two main configurations in Blender, right-click and left-click. The standard for most programs is left-click to select, and right-click does something else. But when I started using Blender, right-click to select was default, so I'm used to selecting things this way. In Blender, they changed the default. Now, you select things with the left click by default. In Blender, you can change it if you want. So typically, I put it on right click, but since I'm teaching you guys, I will tell you how to do things in both right click select and left click select. So for right click select, you use right click to select things, and left click moves the 3D cursor, and W opens the object context menu. If you use left click to select, then left click selects, and right click opens the object context menu. And if you hold shift and right click, that moves the 3D cursor. Otherwise, the controls are pretty much the same. Middle mouse button is used to orbit, and if you're on a laptop with a trackpad, you will need to enable 3-button emulation. And you can do that by going to Edit, Preferences, Input, and Emulate 3-button mouse. And the preferences are saved automatically, unless you disable autosave like I did. For those using trackpad, now if you hold down Alt, left click drag, you will see that you can orbit. If you want to pan around, use Shift and middle mouse button, or if you are on a trackpad, use Shift, Alt, left click. If you use Control and middle mouse button, you can zoom in and out, or Control, Alt, left click for trackpad users. You can also scroll in and out using the mouse wheel. Now the first and most easy thing we can do is delete the default cube, and we can do that by hitting X. But now we don't have any objects, so let's add some. Shift A, go to Mesh and Cube, click on it. Ta-da! Now we have our cube back. Now let's move something. Select the cube and hit G on your keyboard. Now move your mouse around to confirm your move, left click. Or if you decide you don't want to move, right click and it will return to where it was before. And Control Z to undo anything you didn't want to happen. You can click Alt G to reset the object to the center. What if you wanted to move the cube up and not crazy like it is now? Well, in that case, you need to tell Blender how you want the cube to move. Blender understands directions like this. The blue line indicates up or down and is called the Z-axis. And it tells Blender how up or down something is. The green line is the Y-axis and indicates forward or backward. And the red line is the X-axis, which indicates right and left. To move up only, we need to use the Z-axis. So, select the cube again, click G again, then Z. This will lock it to the Z-axis. And it works with X and Y as well. So, if you click G, then the axis you want to move it on, you can move it. Or, in other words, G plus Z is up and down, G plus Y is forward and backward, and G plus X is right and left. But what if you want to move it on two axes at once? Click G, Shift, then the axis that you don't want to move it on. Now to rotate. Now to rotate, you hit R and start moving your mouse. As you can see, the cube starts rotating, but it isn't rotating the way I want it to. So we need to use the axes again. Rotating is much like moving things. Click R plus the axis you want to move around. Like RZ will spin the object around the axis, like the axis is a pole and the object is a ring. And again, this works for all the axes X, Y, and Z. Also, if you double click R, you will get more random rotation. If you do R, Shift, and the axis you don't want to rotate around, it doesn't do anything useful, so don't even try it. If you click Alt R, it will clear your rotation. And finally, if you want to make this cube bigger, hit S to scale it. And the axes apply here too. If you hit S plus X, Y, or Z, it will scale along those axes. And S, Shift, X, Y, or Z also works. Now let's talk more about this interface. If you notice, on the left, you will see this panel. This is called the toolbar. If you don't see it, just click T to bring it up. If you click T again, it will close the toolbar. If you click and hold in the first box, you will notice that options pop up for how to select things. You can choose which method of selecting you like. I like having it on lasso because the other two selection types have shortcuts to them. The first has the shortcut B and the other has the shortcut C. On the circle select, right click to get out of it, deselect everything with Alt A, and to select everything, click A. Next on the toolbar, we have this moving cursor button. Don't use this, because you can use a keyboard shortcut which does the same thing. Next, you have the move tool, which I don't use because the shortcuts are faster. And I encourage you to master the shortcuts because they make things easier when you get more advanced. Next, you have the rotation gizmo. Next, you have the scale gizmo. Next, you have a gizmo that can move, rotate, and scale. Don't use it. Use the shortcut keys! Next, you have annotation, which gives you the ability to draw ideas and notes in 3D. This can be useful in some cases and can be fun to play around with. This system used to be called the grease pencil, but the grease pencil was changed and made more powerful. And so, in a lot of cases, I would prefer to use the grease pencil instead of annotation. Next, we have the ruler tool, which is actually really useful for checking scale. You just left click and drag and adjust it as needed. And if you want to get rid of the ruler, select the ruler, then click X. The next tool is really fun to use. Just left click and drag for the first dimension, then go and move your mouse around for the second dimension, then left click to confirm. Next, if you click N, it will bring up the properties panel. The first tab you see is the item tab. This shows the rotation, location, and scale values of the object you have selected. Next is the tool tab, which shows you the properties of the tool you are using. After that, we have the view tab, which has some fun properties. Okay, I think it's time to move on to something fun. I think we should start modeling something. Make sure the cube is selected, and you can edit this cube in 3 ways. The first way is to hit tab. This will put you in edit mode, and will allow you to start modeling. There is 2 other ways to get into edit mode. The other way is to go over to the mode drop down and select edit mode. And the last way is to hold down Control Tab 6. Or just swipe right like you do on your favorite dating apps. Just kidding. The easiest option here is to click tab. And if you want to return to object mode, hit tab again. In edit mode, you have 3 options to affect the mesh. You have vertices, edges, and faces. You should be on vertices by default. Vertices are the dot things on the cube. Edges are, you guessed it, the edges. And the faces are these flat planes. And you don't have to click up in the corner to switch between these selections. You can use 1, 2, and 3. If you want vertices, hit 1. If you want edges, hit 2. If you want faces, hit 3. So I'm going to hit 3. And I'm going to select this top face. Then I'm going to hit E to extrude and pull this up to about here. Then I'm going to select the side of this new part and hit E again and extrude that outward. And now you can keep selecting faces and extruding them to make whatever shape you want. Also, most of the shortcut keys we learned in object mode will work here as well. For example, if I want to move this face, I can simply hit G and move it. Now you made your first thing in Blender. Cool! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm Ben Lungren, and I'll see you next time.